Well, happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cruise Chat Live. My name is Donovan, and I'm your host and travel agency owner of ELK Travel Co. And today I am so excited because we are joined with who I would describe as the Alaska expert. I had the pleasure of running around with this good friend of mine for about a week earlier this year throughout the last frontier. And he has a lot to bring us today with Alaska Denali Land Tours and how Celebrity and Royal Caribbean does them. So help me with welcoming Brendan Halcomb to the chat. Brendan, welcome.
Well, it's good to be here, Donovan. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience a little bit. You know, I can get super excited about Alaska, so I'll try and keep it just at an equal level for the conversation here today. But love talking about the opportunities, love talking about all the different opportunities that exist out there. So thank you for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, glad to have you on. And, I had the pleasure of heading up to Alaska 3 different times this year with a few different cruise lines and land experiences. So, it was really interesting for me to see how everybody kind of does their own little spin on it. And, I have to say, coming back from those experiences, the way that Celebrity, I was, there with Celebrity in essence, but the way that Celebrity Royal Caribbean as a whole puts their spin on the Denali cruise tour, it really just wowed me. And, I was thinking earlier today, kind of preparing for this and looking through some of the photos. I mean, I had like 1,000 pictures from when we were up there back in May, and just trying to pull out some memories from that. And I ran across a group photo that I took with Kathy, our tour director, and our bus driver, Nick. And I was like, you know what? Kathy and Nick were so much of the difference and really just enhanced the experience. So maybe you could touch on, I don't think a lot of people know when they're, thinking about doing a cruise tour and, going to Denali with a cruise, but they don't understand, what does a tour director mean? Am I going to be with a group of 50 people on a tight schedule? And maybe just kind of talk through kind of broadly what it looks like, and then we can dive into some of the nitty gritty, if you will.
Totally. I think, you put your thumb on it, Donovan. The Alaska cruise tour market, the inland, the interior market, the way that people have, or the options that they have in order to be able to explore both the coastline and the interior of Alaska are varied. There's a lot of folks doing it. There's a lot of way to come in it. There's a lot of variation. When you go to the interior of Alaska, there's lots of different classes of rail carriage. There's lots of different classes of motor coach. There's lots of different classes of hotel. There's lots of different ways in order to structure the way that the land tour operates. So you look at this kind of experience that industry-wide in the cruising industry, lots of different ways to do this. You're exactly right. There's a very particular spin. The different cruise lines, the different operators will come at this in order to deliver an experience to a guest. Now, in my view, great thing. I think that's awesome, because in a lot of arenas, that spin, that way of approaching it, is going to be directly corollary to cost. And I think there should be different cost ways, right, of people to be able to experience the interior of Alaska and the coastline of Alaska. That's a great thing. But we prefer to come at it one very, very particular way. And one great example of that is exactly what you're talking about. Every single Celebrity or Royal Caribbean Alaska cruise tour is what we refer to as a fully escorted experience. That's counter to the way some of the industry operates, which we refer to as a representative-led experience, when you go to each destination each day and there's a rep there and they help you out and they do great and they tell you where to go and which motor coach to get on, etc. But they're not yours. They're not there for you. And on a Royal Caribbean Celebrity cruise tour, when our guests fly into the interior of Alaska, they're met by one person, their dedicated tour guide, and they introduce them to a dedicated motor coach driver who shows them a dedicated deluxe motor coach, beautiful Prevost luxury motor coach with a bathroom. And that driver guide team motor coach is then dedicated to them for the duration of the land tour. Now, typically speaking, we've got about 44, 46 guests that are on board that motor coach, and that driver guide team are dedicated to them for the duration of the land tour. So when you think about all of the things that they may do, a driver is driving, but they're also transporting the luggage between the motor coach and the hotel rooms each day and back down to the motor coach. So you're not dragging it around the property. The tour guide is talking about their life and booking optional excursions and making dining recommendations and pre-checking the guests in. So when they get there, the keys are handed to them. They don't have to stand in line. It just makes the whole thing seamless. It makes it where our guests feel serviced, they feel seen, they feel understood of the things that they are trying to achieve by being in the interior of Alaska when there's this person there in order to help them facilitate that. So we think it's super important. And yeah, that's why every single Royal Caribbean and Celebrity Alaska Cruise Tours is structured in this way.
No, you're 100% spot on. And for those watching at home who may not know, and I didn't do a good job of kind of framing this up, but Celebrity and Royal Caribbean are actually sister cruise lines. And they while the cruise experience, the ship experience can be different, the land experience, right? The cruise tour into Denali is pretty darn similar with some minor differences, but they are sister companies, if you will. And, I think back, here in my background, I have the Riverboat Discovery in Fairbanks, and which was fantastic. I absolutely loved that experience that is included on a Denali cruise tour. But one thing that I remember that stood out as we were coming off the riverboat and we're getting ready to have lunch is there was, 5 or 6 other tour buses there from other cruise lines and land companies. And I can distinctly remember some guests from the other tours, and I won't name who they were with, but they were coming to our group, to our tour director, asking, where do I go? What bus do I get on? Where's lunch? And they were with a cruise line that their, standard default tour is not escorted. You don't have a go-to person to kind of help facilitate those things. And what I like to tell people is just press the easy button, right? You're on vacation, press the easy button. Yes. You don't have to think anymore. So that is 100% true. It really makes a difference. I think people, they hear the word tour director and they get this perception in their head that means they're on this, just kind of rigid schedule and, being told what to do. And there is a small element of that to any cruise tour, but it's really so much more than that. And I remember with Kathy in particular, who's fabulous, and I'm fairly certain this is true of all of the tour directors that work with Celebrity Royal Caribbean, but they are true local Alaskans who are sharing their knowledge and love for Alaska in just a way that you really can't get any other way, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, 100%. They are, many of them are, as is the case in Alaska. It's not easy to be able to get employment in Alaska in the tourism industry all the way through January through to December. It's really a summer season there. So a lot of those folks, they're either from there or they live there, but they got to go out of state in the wintertime in order to continue to get work, and then they come back in the summertime in order to be tour directors. Do you think it would help, Donovan, just to talk a little bit about what a cruise tour is, kind of like what's the gig, why would people do it, just the kind of structural components of it so people understand a little bit, maybe the southeastern coastline of Alaska versus the interior of Alaska?
Yeah, no, I think that would be great to dive in, because I'll tell you in just my discussions with folks who are planning a trip up there, believe it or not, I find a lot of people don't even know that a cruise tour is a thing, or they maybe have heard of it but have no clue what it is. So maybe you can frame that up for us a little bit better.
Yeah, be happy to. And you know what? I know I said that I won't necessarily do a slide, but I'm going to go ahead and do a slide.
Absolutely. Bring it up and we'll pop it there on the screen.
All right. Let me know if you see that map.
Yeah, we've got it. There is Alaska. And all
right, good stuff. So this is a really great question. Alaska is one of the strongest, what we call first to cruise markets. First to cruise markets is just a cruise industry way of saying that the people that have come on this cruise have never been on a cruise before, or maybe haven't been on a cruise with us before. But there's a reason for that. And the reason is that Alaska has this very strong awareness in the American imagination. People are aware of it. They're aware of the lore of it, and they've seen some of the images of the beauty of it. But they're not kind of fully necessarily cognizant of kind of how big it is and what it takes to explore it. And
Yes.
so what happens is that many folks want to go to Alaska, and then they reach out to their travel partner, Donovan, and what they begin to find out is that to do it via any other way apart from a cruise, if you were to try and fly to Alaska and transit around, that's really challenging because many of the destinations are landlocked, particularly on the southeastern coastline of Alaska. And just getting there is difficult, getting out is difficult. And so the easiest, the most economical way in order to experience Alaska, particularly the southeastern coastline of Alaska, is part of a cruise. And that's how we get this influx of people that maybe had never done a cruise before, but they want to go to Alaska and they find out that a cruise is the easiest, best way to go to Alaska.
Right.
However, that's just what we refer to as the southeastern coastline of Alaska. So when you're seeing the map here, between Ketchikan and Seward, that's what we refer to broadly as the Inside Passage. This is a pretty amorphous term. That's a lot of the area of the southeastern coastline of Alaska. But when you hear about iconic destinations like Juneau and Skagway and Icy Strait Point and Sitka and all of these places that deliver on the iconic experience of Alaska, they're pretty much all on the southeastern coastline. So if you're going to do a cruise and you're going to get those 3 or 4 ports, glacial scenic area cruising, maybe scenic cruising amongst the Inside Passage, if you're on the right cruise, that's all going to happen there. However, there's this whole other area of Alaska, and you can see it north of Seward through Fairbanks, that you're not going to be able to get to as part of a cruise. Seward to Vancouver, I would put it roughly at about 1,200 miles as the crow flies. But Seward to Fairbanks, those interior destinations, they're another 500 plus miles.
Yep.
So to be able to explore it, to be able to spend the time, to be able to have the experiences, to be able to deliver on the promise of having those iconic experiences in the interior of Alaska, you got to spend some time there. It's not a one-day thing. It's not an excursion thing. It's not an afternoon thing. It takes many days. And that is why a cruise tour is a little bit unique in the way that we structure it, 2 to 6 night land tour. And that happens either before or after the cruise. So if it's a northbound sailing, as we call it, so it's sailing from Vancouver to Seward, those land tours are post the cruise. And for 2 to 6 nights, you'll go to the interior of Alaska, explore, and then fly home from Anchorage or Fairbanks. And if it's a southbound cruise, that 2 to 6 night land tour is pre the cruise. And so, that will be the exploration of the interior of Alaska and then joining the ship in Seward for that 7-night southbound sailing down to Vancouver. And that's the way that we structure things to give our guests the ability to be able to explore the interior of Alaska in a meaningful way. Like the promise of a cruise tour is not that you're getting functionally different things from just a cruise. It's that you get more of all of the things that drove you to wanted to go to Alaska in the first place. The things that drive people to want to go to Alaska. I mean, there's lots of things, but the core things, are wilderness and wildlife and mountains and glaciers. And you get that on the southeastern coastline of Alaska, but you just get more of it, bigger of it in the interior of Alaska. You get the opportunity to go to Denali National Park with its 6 million acres of pristine and wild and wonderful land. You get the opportunities for more of the big 5 of Alaska wildlife, the moose, the caribou, the grizzlies, the Dall sheep, and to a lesser extent, the wolves because they're nocturnal. You get more opportunities for mountains with the tallest peak in North America, which, when she's measured from her base is bigger than Everest, you just get more of all of these iconic experiences. So like the reason to do a cruise tour, like there's a reason to do it with Celebrity and Royal Caribbean, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But that's not a reason to do a cruise tour. A reason to do a cruise tour is because you want more of all of the iconic experiences that drove you to want to go to Alaska in the first place. By exploring both the coastline and the interior of Alaska, you just get more of it. And the way that you do that is by spending the time in the interior of Alaska. And the way that you do that is by doing it before or after the cruise.
I don't know that I could have said it any better. And when I think of the cruise tour experience, you're certainly right in that it is just more of Alaska. But what I have found is kind of the land portion that you're doing really has a distinct feel. It is different than being on the cruise. You're seeing a lot of the same things, but you're seeing it in a different way. You're connecting with the local towns, these small towns of 1,000 people. I think of passing through Talkeetna. Talkeetna is not a big town at all. I mean, there is no Motel 6 or things like that to stay at, but there's a lot to see and do there. So let me ask. So I think this kind of ties in with where we're taking this, but time of year, right? That's always a big question. When's the best time to go to Alaska? And I very distinctly remember a quote that you said. I won't steal your thunder on when is the best time to go, but maybe you can just talk about that. When is the best time to go to Alaska to do a Denali cruise tour? How do you make that decision if you have some flexibility?
Yeah, so the way I encourage people to think about this is not necessarily the best time, but when is the best time for me? Because different seasons of Alaska, excuse me, different seasons in Alaska will give you greater opportunities for differing experiences. So, Alaska is essentially a spring through full season. We operate essentially May through around September time. If you go in May time, there's going to be less folks there. You're just kind of kicking off the season. That's great. There's the flora and the fauna hasn't grown out quite as much. That can create some more opportunities for wildlife spotting when you're in the key areas. Into June, well, the salmon are starting to spawn in June typically. And particularly if you're in the areas where bears are hunting the salmon as they're spawning and you want those bear viewing opportunities, well, you have to be there in that window in order to be able to see that or just see the salmon spawning. You also have summer solstice that happens on June 21st when you're going to get the most sunlight. And then as you transition into the back end of the season, well, now, you've got opportunities for full foliage. And, if you've ever been in Canada or New England,
it's beautiful,
incredible. But now times that by, in my view, 10,000 as you go to somewhere like Denali National Park and you start to see that expanse of land turning burnt orange, which is just spectacular. And, on the very rare occasion, if somebody is going to be doing a very, very late season cruise tour and ending in Fairbanks, they might be trying to create some opportunities for themselves for Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. So it's not necessarily about there being a best time. There's just a best time for you. And what I encourage people to think about is pick those 2 to 3 or 4 experiences that are just kind of non-negotiable, right? Because you can go to Alaska 10 times and have differing experiences. So pick those 2 or 3 or 4 experiences that you and your family, your loved ones are saying, look, if we don't come away from this without having these experiences in some meaningful fashion, then it's not going to be a win for us. Now pick the time of year that is going to be most likely to deliver on those experiences for you. I always say to folks, a good way to start with this discussion with your friends and family and loved ones is start with, when does everyone have the most time to go to Alaska? Because all of the experiences, they're natural, they're natural experiences. And the longer you go to Alaska for, the more opportunity you have for those magical natural moments to happen. So how long do you have to have an amazing vacation experience in Alaska? Start there. Pick out your 2 or 3 or 4 maybe experiences that are non-negotiable, and then fit when you want to go into Alaska that's going to give you the most chance of having those experiences. That's a nice way to think about how you're going to pick out the time of year that you go to Alaska and how long you go to Alaska for.
Yep. No, I love that. And that's really what I try to encourage clients to do when planning is, really how long can you be gone for? Because the longer you spend in Alaska just gives you the opportunity to see and do more. And that's where, I think a conversation around just helping people to understand that, the journey from Denali to Seward, for example, is roughly an 8 hour journey. I mean, that's your entire day. So what I've found is when you add more days, you're kind of breaking everything up and you're shortening the amount of travel that you do each day. So it's, a little bit easier there, and you could argue more enjoyable. But I think if memory serves correct, with Celebrity Royal Caribbean, kind of the shortest land tour you can do, which is really, really fast, is 2 days, which gives you kind of
Yeah.
a 9 day total. And then you go up to something like 13 or 14 days. So,
Yeah, I wouldn't
without getting,
recommend 2 days.
no, the 2 days is
I think
really,
it's,
really fast.
yeah, I think this is a great point, and that a lot of folks. What I encourage people who are going to Alaska is there are some questions that you want to be asking your travel professional. Having a travel professional for a cruise tour is a great thing if they know what they're talking about when it comes to the cruise tour, because there's a lot of unseen elements to it that you don't see as part of kind of marketing or brochures or things like that. There's unseen elements to it, which if you can get some great insight on it, it is really going to contribute a lot to your overall experiences. So when when Donovan was with me in Alaska, and he told me he was coming back to Alaska in 3 weeks after he left me, I was like, wow, that's a big commitment to come into Alaska. So obviously you are someone that knows your stuff. And I think one of the things that you would say to your clients, and one of the great recommendations that you can get from a travel partner that does know their stuff is, yes, think about how long you want to go to Alaska for, but also be cognizant of the specific travel segments that are associated with that
Yes.
individual cruise tour, because those two things are not the same thing. And yes, a shorter cruise tour or a shorter land tour typically denotes longer travel segments, because if you are in the interior of Alaska for a couple nights, well, you've got to get to Denali and then get to Anchorage or Fairbanks in 2 days. You're going to have longer segments. But it's not, it doesn't always mean that. And so a great travel professional, in my view, will have that conversation about, how long do you want to go? What are those meaningful experiences that you want, and get you to a time of year when you want to go. But they'll also say, what are the things that you just don't want? And, if somebody's saying, look, I never want an 8 hour travel segment, great. You just remove all of those cruise tours that have those longer travel segments. And, uh, as someone that just flew back from London with my 8 and 3-year-old, I never want an
Oh
8
my
hour,
goodness.
9 hour travel segment again either. But that's what a great travel partner can do for you. They can see the unseen, and they can help you think about things that you may have not thought about. And so, yeah, it's a great way to guide that discussion.
No, I think that is spot on. And I have, it's so funny because I'll have people come to me, and they might have a cruise line or an itinerary picked out, and once we kind of start talking through the details, things like this, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's not at all what I want." And again, I won't
Right.
won't pick on anybody here, but there are cruise lines out there that kind of their thing is that kind of direct, train, direct bus ride from Denali to the ship or vice versa. And that sounds great on paper, but when you realize that is an 8+ hour adventure, it doesn't always
Yes.
sound as good afterwards. So to your point,
Yeah.
just understanding how the travel plays out, even on celebrity.com, royalcaribbean.com, when you go trying to do your own research, it just doesn't really explain that well. So to your point, that's something that I know, I mean, just like the back of my hand, of kind of how that works, and can help you to navigate that. Now, I'm curious if you have any strong opinions or thoughts. I find a lot of people are unsure. How do I choose between starting or ending this adventure in Fairbanks versus Anchorage? What are the pluses and minuses there? I have my own opinions, but I think it can vary based on what someone wants to get out of their time.
Yeah. I don't think that anyone should feel very strongly about it either way. And I say this for a couple of reasons. When I'm working with the trade community, what I always encourage everyone to do is not necessarily give a hard line of what people should and shouldn't do, but more give a client a perspective of why they might feel one way versus the other.
Right.
because what you will often find is that when we're working in cruise tours, there's much more limited inventory. It's just the way it works. We're not talking about bigger. We are talking about bigger ships, but that's not the bottleneck. The bottleneck is hotels and rail, and so we're working with much less capacity. And what can happen is that a client can, want a particular cruise tour, but when it doesn't go in the direction of the recommendation that has been made to them, then they back out of that. And that's not an ideal situation. So the way I think about it is this. First, it's important to recognize that if cruiser number one, as example, the northbound or southbound version of cruiser number one are identical. Everything that is included northbound is included southbound. There is no difference from the lane tour perspective. Um, so the way I think about it and the perspective that I give sometimes is you hear a lot the perspective of, well, it's nice to get the hustle and the bustle of the lane tour, right? I don't want to say out of the way, but the hustle and bustle done, and then you get on the ship and you relax down to Vancouver. I get it. That's a perspective. But an alternate perspective that I have is that if you think about a southbound cruise tour, again, one where the land tour is before the cruise, well, you have a longer flight on that, right? You've got to get to Anchorage or Fairbanks. That's going to be a longer flight. And there's a lot of inconvenient flight times to get to Anchorage or Fairbanks. So when you get there, I don't know what time that's going to be. There's going to be 22 to 23 to 24 hours of sunlight. And if you're not a great flyer like me, I don't sleep on planes. If you have to get up at 7 a.m. the next day to start your land tour, it's going to be a little bit tough. Whereas with a northbound cruise tour, you're flying to Vancouver. That's a much easier flight. And then the first day of the cruise is the first day of every cruise. If you've ever been on one, is a sea day. So you don't have to do anything and you relax, and then you cruise up to Seward, and it's all comfortable, of course. And then you get off, you cruise and you start your land tour. So for someone like me that just doesn't do well traveling and doesn't sleep on planes, and northbound is way preferable to southbound. But for someone that does have that genuine preference of kind of doing the really crazy adventurous stuff first and then getting on to relax on the cruise, well, southbound would certainly be better. So my perspective of it is for just give people some different viewpoints as to why somebody might like one or the other, and let them kind of sink into the one that feels most comfortable for them. And then you can kind of look at their different cruise tours that are associated with it.
And I just want to note for everybody watching at home, it may seem like that we are not taking any hard stances on any topic with Denali Cruise Tour, but that really is because it can vary based on what's important to you. And that's one of the things that I try to help my clients navigate is just talking through these different options and hearing what's important to them and helping to guide them to what's best, because there really is no this is the best. So it's not that we're not taking hard stances, but it really can just depend. So now, one of the things that I found really unique to Celebrity Royal Caribbean that maybe you could touch on more is kind of the hotel lodging side of things and how you guys approach that, because it's a little bit different. But I thought it was great. Can you touch on that just a little bit?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So there's as you kind of get to Seward and you have that land tour that operates between Seward and up to Fairbanks if you're going that far. Obviously, this is multiple nights, and clearly there's overnight accommodation that's needed as part of that. We approach this very simply, which is to say that number one, we want to be in the destinations that deliver on the experiences, right? When you think about Alaska, it is really important where you stay. If you're in staying in Anchorage and you're not in downtown Anchorage and you're, 30 minutes outside of the city, that is going to materially affect your experience. So, and it's not uncommon to be able to see that. And so we really want to be where we want to be in the places that deliver on the experience of being in Alaska, the places that deliver on the wilderness and the wildlife and the mountains and the glaciers. Now, when we're there, we're going to stay in the best property available in the area. and crucially, that's going to be close to local communities. So, to give you some examples of these, there's a property called Hotel Alyeska. Obviously, we kind of walked around it, none of them when you were there. So we stay in Girdwood. We like Girdwood. It's a great destination. Hotel Alyeska is not just the best property in Girdwood; it's like by a mile the best property in Alaska.
It is.
A 4-diamond-style restaurant on the top of the mountain, heated saltwater swimming pools that look out over lush valleys, a Nordic spa. I mean, just like nothing in Alaska comes close. We want to go to Girdwood. Alyeska is the best property that's there, best property in Alaska. That's why we stay there. Same thing in Talkeetna. Like when we go to Talkeetna, we stay at a place called Talkeetna Alaskan Lodge. I would cite it as a top 3 property anywhere in Alaska. But crucially, it's got these great views. Let me put up a slide if I can.
Yeah,
Is it okay if I do that?
Deck. Yeah, bring it up that back deck.
Yeah. Let me see if I can. Let me see here.
And while you're bringing that up, I'll let everybody know at home you can do some amazing excursions from Talkeetna. Totally just out of this world. You can do a lot there. So super cool place.
Let's see here. All right. Always fun having technical difficulty. Here we go. Yeah, so in Talkeetna, let me Windows slide. Here we go. All right. Let me, if we're seeing everything as we need to see it here.
Yes, we've got it.
All right, good stuff. So in Talkeetna, it's a great property. Again, as I would cite it, a top 3 property anywhere in Alaska. But that view that you're seeing on the top right hand side here, that's the view from the back of Talkeetna Alaskan Lodge. Now, this particular area is called the Sistina River Valley. That's the Alaska Range, and that's Denali, the tallest peak in North America. And this image doesn't do it justice to how incredible, how in your face this really view is on a clear day. It just feels like it's right in front of you. Now, that's a great property. There's really only 2 major properties anywhere in Alaska, and I say major properties that have these views. One of them is a 1-hour one-way trip away from downtown Talkeetna, whereas Talkeetna Alaskan Lodge is a 5-minute complimentary transfer away. And so it creates that opportunity to, be in a great property, be in a great destination, but also have ease of access to that destination to have those great experiences. Go down there and have that beer with the bush pilot, right, that's been flying through the mountains during the day, and have those great local experiences, because we want ease of access to those local communities. Another example of that is Denali Park Village, which is just a 12-minute complimentary transfer away from the gates of Denali National Park. So you got easy access there. But what's important to know about it is that we're always going to stay in the best property in the area, but those properties themselves will be different based on the area. For example, when you go to Denali, it was developed national park style accommodation. And so you don't have anywhere in Denali that comes to the level of luxury and service and amenities that Hotel Alyeska offers. And so we're always going to stay in the best property in the area. It's always going to be close to local communities, and it's always going to be in the area that delivers on why folks wanted to go to Alaska in the first place. That's our kind of philosophy on how we deliver on those experiences.
No, I think that really kind of sums that up great. And to your point, there are other options out there that are not celebrity or not Royal Caribbean, and they're great in their own respect, but you may be an hour from where you actually want to be, kind of in their bubble. So again, it's just understanding what is important to you, what type of experience do you want. I will say the properties that we stayed at earlier this year were amazing. I loved the Talkeetna Lodge, the opportunities of things that you can do there, the views off of that back deck. A lot of people don't know, fun fact, but you actually get better views, I would argue, from Talkeetna of Denali than you actually do in Denali National Park. I don't think many people think of that, but
Well, it
That is
kind of
true.
depends
So
on how folks approach Denali, but it's a great point. Like it comes back to that question of what is important to you, what's most meaningful to you about going to Alaska. If top of that list is I want the most opportunities for those incredible views of the tallest peak in North America, well, one of the things a great travel partner would do in that scenario, and I know you would do it too, Donovan, is that you would structure a cruise tour that includes an overnight in Talkeetna. Because to your point, there's two great opportunities in order to see Mount McKinley from a land tour in Alaska. One of those is Denali to Denali. Every cruise tour industry-wide is going to overnight in Denali National Park. But the other is in Talkeetna. Not all cruise tours go to Talkeetna. And you're also viewing Mount Denali from different directions. If you're in Denali, you're looking back. If you're in Talkeetna, you're looking northerly towards it. And because the mountain is creating its own weather systems, they themselves, because where they're placed, create different types of views and opportunities for those views. So, absolutely, if seeing the tallest peak in North America is the top of your list, just an easy transition there into selecting a cruise tour itinerary to one that overnights in Talkeetna. You're so right.
absolutely. Now, with every cruise tour, right, you're always going to have a segment that is on a scenic rail car. Celebrity Royal Caribbean used the Wilderness Express, which was fantastic. So maybe you can talk through a little bit just what that experience is like, what the train experience is like with
Yeah,
Wilderness Express, because it certainly is a
you got
highlight
it.
for most people.
So this is a nice shot of the inside of the Wilderness Express rail carriages. In the interior of Alaska is that there's one state-owned organization. They're called the Alaska Railroad. They own the rail lines. They own the engines. However, the rail carriages themselves can either be state-owned or independently owned. Now, we simply use the best that's there. There's nothing better than the Wilderness Express rail carriages. You got, economical rail carriages that are kind of day-to-day communities in and around Alaska. So being aware of the class and quality of rail carriage that's included in the cruise tour is really important. Again, we just use the best that's there. There's nothing better than them. 80 persons up top, luxury, wide, well-apportioned leather seating. There's power ports in these seats. Bar service to the seats, excuse me, specialty cocktails, beers, all available for purchase, brought to the seats. Of course, those gorgeous dome ceiling windows of glass for everybody to have incredible views of Alaska as they're trundling through. Now, you're not seeing it here, but down below, there's a restaurant, freshly prepared meals by chef on board the rail car that day, again, available for purchase. These are amazing rail experiences. Actually, the only rail cars in Alaska where every single seat is front-facing, because some folks don't like riding backwards. So everything is structured on the Wilderness Express, so they are front-facing seats. Really, really, really cool rail experiences. Now, what I'll share with you is a nice view of the Alaska Railroad. This here is what we refer to as the Denali Star Route, not what we refer to as the Denali Star Route. It's what the Alaska Railroad referred to as the Denali Star Route. So on the left-hand side of your screen there, that's basically what we refer to as that is the rail belt. Surely, with some deviation, is broadly where land tours operate in Alaska as part of cruise tours. Now, there's some deviation to this. We, for example, go down to Homer, which is kind of to the left of Seward. That's not part of the rail belt, but broadly speaking, you kind of follow the rail belt of Alaska. The green section is what's called the Denali Star Route, and that is the route that we travel on with the Wilderness Express rail carriages. So between those black sections is what we refer to as a segment. Anchorage to Talkeetna, Talkeetna to Denali, Denali to Fairbanks. Every one of those segments, every single cruise tour, with Royal Caribbean or Celebrity includes a segment on board the Wilderness Express. Now, some of our cruise tours have multiple rail segments. One of our cruise tours, cruise tour number 8, travels the whole way between Anchorage and Fairbanks by Wilderness Express rail. So if you want a cruise tour that has more rail, you can certainly pick a cruise tour that does that. So it's just an awesome way to travel. And as I said, every single Celebrity or Royal Caribbean cruise tour is going to include one of those segments, but very easy just to select cruise tours that have multiple rail segments if indeed you want it.
Absolutely. Now, I wonder if you could touch on one thing that I found to be to me a big differentiator with Celebrity Royal Caribbean is, and this ties in with the cruise, but being able to visit Seward, right? Whether you're starting your cruise there or you're getting an overnight in Seward, but I walked away from Seward as, man, this is such a cool little town with a lot to see and do. The gateway to Kenai Fjord. So, can you just kind of briefly talk about Seward, Alaska?
Yeah, you're waving a red flag to a bull here, Donovan. This is. I'll get on my soapbox on this until I die. Yeah, this is a great recommendation, and one of the things I love about taking travel partners to the interior of Alaska, as we did, was that you get to have these experiences that give you a differing perspective on the types of experiences that your clients can have. I think one of the shortfalls of just a lack of knowledge, and I don't say that in a negative sense because there's so much out there for everyone to be aware of, but one of the negatives is that kind of people often think about Seward as just an access point to be able to get on the ship. You fly to Anchorage and you go down to Seward to get on the ship, or vice versa. Seward, as you point out, sits on the Kenai Peninsula. The Kenai Peninsula is the destination where Alaskans go to play, particularly those folks that are from Anchorage. And everyone knows this. If the locals are playing somewhere, it's somewhere where you want to be playing too. And to your point, Seward is spectacularly beautiful. It's 20 plus years that I've been going to Alaska now. I go 2 or 3 times a year, and just Seward is one of those places that just never, ever, ever fails to take your breath away. It is that gorgeous. So, I think about not just Seward, but the Kenai Peninsula as kind of an area to explore for us broadly to Seward, because that's where we go in and out of. Seward's a great town, great vibe, great restaurants, great place to explore. To your point, access to Kenai Fjords. Anytime that we're overnighting in Seward, we're always taking our guests out on a boat tour, either a 50 or 100-mile round trip of the Kenai Peninsula. Either we kind of explore some of the areas closer to Seward, or we go all the way to Kenai Fjord National Park. But we also have cruise tours that go down to Homer. Now, Homer is the access point. It's still in the Kenai Peninsula, but Homer is the access point to what's called Kachemak Bay State Park, which was the first designated state park in Alaska. And everyone just take a second and think about that. Of all of the beauty and the wildlife and the spectacular scenery that exists in Alaska, this was the first place that they said needed to be a designated state park. That's how beautiful it is.
You should want to go there.
You should want to go there, absolutely. So this whole area is just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. You always want to go into the interior. You always want to go to Denali. But if you have the opportunity to do so, if you want to explore the Kenai coastline of Alaska, I just couldn't recommend it strongly enough.
I love it. I love it. Now, as we're kind of circling around the full cruise tour experience, I think the last kind of big bucket of things to talk about is your included activities. And I think a lot of people don't realize when you book a cruise tour package, there is a lot included. Your lodging is included, your transportation is included, certainly the cruise itself. But you do have a variety of included activities, one of those being one of the tours that are done there at Denali National Park. So can you just kind of briefly talk about what that piece of the cruise tour looks like?
Yeah, we think about a cruise tour as 5 elements. Fundamentally, it's the unforgettable cruise. And when you say, of course, the cruise is included, absolutely. In 2027, Celebrity has the renewed Celebrity Solstice, which is doing our open jaw sailings in Alaska. That in itself is super exciting. And, if you want some more details on that, then, reach out to Donovan. He'll be able to talk to you about the renewed Celebrity Solstice more because it's beautiful. And then Royal Caribbean have a Quantum class ship doing those sailings in Alaska, which the hardware on it is just incredible. So the sailings is a big part of it. But then as part of the land tour, it is the fully escorted experiences we spoke about, the best local lodges close to local communities, deluxe transportation, whether it's as part of rail or those deluxe motor coaches. But then yeah, included experiences are a big part of the deal as well. Now, every single cruise tour includes, at a minimum, a tour into Denali National Park. Now, if anybody is kind of unfamiliar with Denali a little bit, Denali is a different national park from many of those that are around the U.S. in that private motorized vehicle transportation is prohibited to go into the park.
Right.
So really the only way that you get in there is with the park services, the vendors. And so there's a couple of tours. One is called the Denali Natural History Tour. One is called the Tundra Wilderness Tour. And they go either 17 or 40 miles into the park. They're included as part of every single Celebrity or Royal Caribbean Alaska cruise tour. But that's just the bare minimum. We've really got a robust array of included activity built into our cruise tours. And they're mostly big, iconic experiences. You know, when you go to Fairbanks, as the picture shows behind you, you cruise down the Chena on the Riverboat Discovery, or you're going to the Gold Dredge 8 mining operations, as I mentioned in Kenai. In Seward, you're going out on the Kenai Peninsula as part of a 50 or 100 mile boat trip, potentially all the way to Kenai Fjords National Park. These are big, iconic experiences. So there's always a rich inclusion of activities that are built into the lane tour itself. But then, of course, there's the opportunity for people to book optional excursions on top of that if they want to add to it as well. So there's always a good, robust array of activities there, but lots more to do as well.
Absolutely. And, we don't have to get too deep into the weeds on this, but, I have a lot of people who have done a little bit of research, and they ask me, in Denali, is it better to do natural history? Is it better to do tundra wilderness? And kind of, if you're sensing a theme here today, people, it really just depends. There's an argument to be made for both, on why one could be better or worse than, or I shouldn't say worse, but better than the other. But again, that's something that we can navigate and talk about whenever you're ready to plan that cruise tour.
Big time, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you get you more opportunities for wildlife and incredible scenery and mountain views on one, but it's a longer bus tour as well. I know you know all of that, Donovan, and you're able to share that with your clients. But yeah, it's a different deal. I think above all else, we are super proud at Celebrity and Royal as to the experiences that we offer. When you think about the range of experiences that are out there, we're really just kind of looking for the best elements in order to piece them together to create the cruise tour experiences. So we're very, very proud of the experiences that we offer by both land and sea, ultimately delivering the very best of Alaska. But above all, just go to Alaska. We'd love to take you there with the Royal Caribbean Celebrity. We think we're going to give you a great time and a great experience. But just go to Alaska. It is such an incredibly beautiful place that will take your breath away.
I could not agree more. And as we kind of work to wrap things up here, I just have two kind of final quick hitter questions, if you will, for you that come up. Would you say, in your professional opinion, Alaska and specifically Alaska cruise tours, are they family friendly? Are they kid friendly? And then kind of a follow up to that, are they accessible, right? Folks who have special needs or considerations, who may be wheelchair bound, power motor scooters, those things. Can those things be done on an Alaska cruise tour?
Are they family friendly? Absolutely. Both Alaska and Alaska cruise tours. Think about it as a piece. We're talking about cruise tours here today, but one of the conversations that you want to have is, how can my family best have this experience? One of the things I love most about what's been happening over the last 10 years is how Alaska has changed as a destination for consumers. I started going to Alaska 20 years ago. My first contracts in Alaska were in 2003. And, back then it was very much kind of like a bucket list destination for retirees. That's kind of where it was, certainly the way it was talked about and the way it was positioned. And I think like one of the most beautiful things that I've seen over the last 20 years is how it's changed to a multi-generational family destination. And it's changed to become a place where, people of all ages, families of differing ability levels can, enjoy the destination together, and have those great experiences together. Part of that is to do with how the hardware has changed. Very different ships started cruising to Alaska, over the last 10 years. And that's created a multi-generational, or certainly contributed to a multi-generational family market that I think is an amazing thing. If you think that Mickey Mouse and the Magic Castle created a sense of wonderment in your kids, try seeing them watch a 50,000-pound whale breach the ocean, right?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Or, have them be 15 meters from black bear fishing for salmon. Like, that creates that sense of wonderment and awe, which really, is the family memories for a lifetime. And that's really, really special. So yeah, Alaska absolutely is a multi-generational family destination. Now, our Alaska cruise tours specifically, multi-generational family, they are absolutely for kids, just not very young kids, I would say. The main thing to think about when a cruise tour is those motor coach segments or those travel segments, because, in as much as, you can get great recommendations in order to trim them down, there's still at minimum going to be 3 to 4 hours, because that's just, even some of the smaller segments between certain destinations. And if, younger kids are just not comfortable with that, then they're not going to be comfortable on a cruise tour. And, you don't want to put them in uncomfortable spaces. The way I think about it is about 10. It's probably the youngest you want to think about for kids on a cruise tour. A lot depends on the kid. Some kids are going to be more comfortable. Some kids are going to be less comfortable. But that's the way I would think about it. You do tend to find that the kind of the median age on a cruise tour is higher. There's not as many families on a cruise tour. And that's partly down to the cost. They are more expensive than just the Alaska cruise. And of course, the time as well, right? Instead of just talking about 7 days, you're talking about 9 to 13 days. And that's a lot of vacation time if you're talking about a family,
Yep.
With younger kids. So you do tend to find that the kind of average age is a little bit older. But in just experience, is Alaska a great destination for families? 10,000%. Take kids to Alaska. They're going to love it. Are cruise tours great for kids? I would think about 10, probably being the youngest, and then just gauge it with that individual child. For accessibility, yes, cruise tours are 100% ADA accessible. So everything that is included in a cruise tour as standard, that means of course, the cruise experience, but then also lodgings, transportation, included activities that we spoke about. Everything that's included as standard is 100% ADA accessible. And that, we would simply, if, for example, someone was in a wheelchair, they would be assigned to a wheelchair motor coach and obviously an ADA accessible room or whatever it might be. We just need to know what that ability need is, to be able to structure things around it and be able to provide guidance on it. So everything that's included as standard, 100% ADA accessible. Obviously some of the optional excursions, that's going to depend, but everything that's included as standard is ADA accessible.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And as we kind of come to the end of our time here, and it's, gosh, it's hard to believe it is August 25th. We literally just have a few weeks left of the Alaska season for 2026. And what a year it has been. But hey, 2027 is and has been open and available to book. To your point, the Celebrity Solstice doing those one-way open jaw cruises that you can pair with a cruise tour. My strong opinion that I regularly tell people, I think that is the best ship doing the one-way cruises in Alaska of any cruise line. The best.
Yeah.
You've got the Celebrity Summit out of Vancouver. You have the beautiful Celebrity Edge doing cruises out of Seattle. And then I believe 2028 is just around the corner. Do I have that right?
September 1st. Yeah, we're gearing up in order to deploy our 2028 season. I don't know what I can say. Honestly, I don't know if the PR release is sent out on it yet. It's going to be pretty consistent in Alaska going into our 2028 season. We're going to continue to have a Solstice class ship doing those open Joe sailings in Alaska. I don't want to get into too many more specifics than that. But yeah, that's scheduled to open the week of September 1st. So if you're excited to go in Alaska in 2027, then lots of great opportunities that still exist with Celebrity and Royal Caribbean. But if you're all looking to look a little bit further out, just need to wait a week or so, and we'll have those 2028 departures available.
Absolutely. And as I always tell everybody, especially when you're planning that family, multi-generational group up to Alaska, the earlier that you can book to get those cabins together, be on the better side of the ship, all the things that are important to you, the earlier you can book, truly just better for you ultimately. And that's one of the things that I help my clients do is navigate all the options, all the land tour options that we've talked about today, and really help you to understand what's going to be the best fit for you. So for all those watching at home, if you're ready to plan that next cruise to Alaska, whether it's 2027, 28, or really any cruise anywhere, but we're talking Alaska today, please reach out, elktravelco.com. I think we have a fancy dancy QR code down there at the bottom you can scan and head over to our website. Kind of our take on it, we like to schedule a planning call with everybody, 15, 20, 30 minutes to really talk through everything like we have today and kind of arrive at what's going to be the best fit for you. So please do that. And lastly, Brendan, thank you so much for coming on today. It's always a fun time talking with you. Our time together back in May up in Alaska was amazing. So thank you for your time. Any final thoughts or words that you'd like to leave us with today?
No, just as I said, above all else, go to Alaska. Again, we'd love to take you there. We're going to give a great experience. But above all else, go to Alaska. Give Donovan a call. There's a lot of nuance there. And the more you work through that nuance, the better there is a product on the end of it that's going to be best for your individual family's needs. Great to see you again, Donovan. Love that you've taken your interest and the passion for Alaska that I saw back in May and bringing it out to you. It's a great thing to see. So thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. And everybody have a great